Welcome back, Canonites. I didn't think we'd be getting the second chapter of the UNSC Archives series so soon, but here we are. After a brilliant kickoff to the series with Unspoken, today's video dives into the development of the Grappleshot, one of the Chief's latest pieces of equipment. Unlike the previous video in this series, this video gives us more insight into the actual development of this hardware, but like Unspoken, there remains an emotional core to the story being told. So, let's dive in. Like before, after loading into these archives, we're given a message telling us what this video will explore. Quote, "At the height of the Human-Covenant conflict, a civilian engineer built a prototype for the rapid mass manipulation of heavy objects, a device she hoped the UNSC would adopt and integrate into the Master Chief's combat arsenal." After that, the video loads. We find ourselves in the lab of this civilian engineer, working on what would become the Grappleshot as we begin to hear some narration. Eventually, we cut to the start of a video log, the first of many, documenting the development of this new hardware. The initial video date shown reads October 16th, 2549, though when the video actually loads up and we start on the development logs, the date we see is August 26th, 2549. So, the Grappleshot, or Project Magnus as this engineer calls it, took about 2 months to go from this initial build to a functional prototype. As the development log begins, the engineer informs us that her initial proposal has been rejected by the UNSC, so she decided to build Project Magnus herself. What really stood out to me here is just how massive this device is, and it does seem to be built to scale. It's easy to forget how small things can look from the Spartan perspective. We can also see on the recording screen some words near the bottom, which read System, then Something, then John 117 Master Chief. I can't make out much else of the text, but it just seems to reinforce the idea that this engineer is developing the Grappleshot with the Master Chief in mind. So the engineer begins her first test, and naturally it doesn't go well. So the engineer keeps tinkering and logging her progress. As she does, we not only see the development of this hardware, but glimpses into this woman's life. We can see she lives in what I would guess is a prefabricated home, a pretty small one at that, with a shower, a bed literally in the side of the wall, and her main living space. This home, if you can call it that, also has a garden for the engineer to grow her own food. To add an element of humanity to it all, we see regular calls between this engineer and her daughter. The mother-daughter interactions are wonderful. You can see a genuine relationship between them. Sadly, we don't get too much detail on the daughter, where she is, or why the engineer isn't living with her. Is this separation part of the engineer's work or the result of some other situation? I initially thought the daughter might have enlisted in the UNSC, then I thought her hair looked like it would be far too long for military regulation. However, with how much regulations are changing even right now for women in the US military, it's possible the UNSC has different standards than what we might be used to. So maybe the daughter is enlisted, but I can't say with any certainty. I'm kinda leaning towards not enlisted though. Interestingly, during one of these interactions, the daughter tells her mother a riddle involving several freighters and how far they'd be able to travel. Watch the video if you want the full riddle, but the answer is that they'd be able to fly 350 parsecs, which is over 1141 light years. The mother then notes that no human ship would ever need to fly that far. Remember, this is 2549, when human slipspace capability wasn't very effective, thus they haven't explored much of the galaxy. Prior to the Halo incident, humanity had explored maybe the first 100 light-years around their solar system, and even then not all that thoroughly considering the Jackal homeworld is only 41 light-years from Earth. Moving forward, as the logs continue, we eventually arrive at September 9th, 2549, when the engineer hears a report about Arcadia being glassed. This is sort of an audio version of a blink and you'll miss it moment. Arcadia was one of the colonies featured in the original Halo Wars, the colony coming under Covenant attack after an artifact on Harvest pointed the Covenant to Arcadia. The Covenant invaded and searched for what they were after, but eventually left the colony unglassed. Over the next several years, people would slowly return to Arcadia, setting up new, though largely lawless communities on the planet. Sadly, the Covenant would return to finish their work, completing Arcadia's glassing by September 9th, 2549. Anyway, the engineer continues her work, encouraged by her daughter, and on September 14th, 2549, the Grappleshot is finally born. And God, the joy this woman expresses at her success is contagious, as I definitely cried when she finally succeeded. The video then ends with the engineer and daughter looking forward to seeing each other once again. The Grappleshot would still need additional development, and its final journey from an engineer's dream to a part of Mjolnir remains a mystery for now. The start of the video has the date October 16th, 2549, which is more than a month after the first successful trial. So the Grappleshot's development took at least another month, likely resubmitted to the UNSC on that date, but what happened afterwards? We have no record of it being used by Spartans prior to the implementation of Gen 3 Mjolnir. Did Halsey or the UNSC never see the value in the gear, or did its full development take several additional years? Maybe the UNSC rejected the idea, but Halsey saw its value when developing Gen 3, or perhaps the Grappleshot has been in use for longer than we're aware. Currently, there are still gaps to fill in. Further, why did this engineer develop this tech for Spartans specifically, as the short claims? Was that simply because only a Spartan would be able to handle the full forces of the finished Grappleshot, something to do with power, or maybe something more personal? What motivated her to do this? Was she perhaps saved by a Spartan, or even the Master Chief himself? Maybe she's just that altruistic. Further, why is she separated from her daughter? Is that related to her work, the war, something else? And I definitely want to know if they were able to reunite and what they've gone on to do. The lore impact for this short is minor compared to the previous episode, but that's what happens when you explore one of Halo's oldest technologies as opposed to something new like this. I appreciate the Easter eggs the team could fit in, notably Arcadia's fall, but there's only so much that can be done. Still, this was a great second episode of this UNSC Archives series. I'm wondering if we'll get videos like this for each piece of equipment in Halo Infinite. If we get one on the thruster ability, for example, I hope they can address some of the lingering questions surrounding the tech, such as why it was present in Mark IV but then disappeared until Gen 2. That might be a bit much for a marketing short, however. Regardless, I remain excited for this series. What do you want to see next? Let me know in the comments below. One idea I loved was suggested by the Eld on Twitter, that maybe we could see an episode with Dr. Halsey as played by Natasha McElhone, the woman who will play her in the TV series. Regardless of your current feelings about the show, I think we can all generally agree that it would be cool to have a future episode like this in the UNSC Archives series. But again, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you all for watching as always. Stick around for the Patreon shoutout, and until next time, this has been Halo Canon. First, I'd like to give a big thank you to our Horospus patrons. First, there's Hope, then we have Freight, Discombobulated Sycophant, Justin Montgomery, Man in the Dark, Keisha Dila, Daddy Anarchy, Great Scott Productions, Jumpy Sucks Balls, and Lone Ronin 117. Thank you all for your amazing support of the channel. Next, I'd like to thank our theoretical patrons. If you'd like to see your name here or get a direct shout out, check out patreon.com/halocanon. You can simply support the channel or get additional benefits, such as behind the scenes materials, including raw audio for upcoming videos, or even shout outs like this. All patrons now get early access to certain videos as well, and more benefits are to come. However, your continued viewership is more than enough for me. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up, and maybe even subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. If you really enjoy this, turn on that notification bell so you can be among the first to see new videos when they release. But for all my fellow Canonites, keep on being awesome.